Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a story that literally reads like a geopolitical thriller. We are looking at a sudden, incredibly public conflict between two heavily armed nuclear nations that usually operate entirely worlds apart. It's a massive diplomatic shockwave, and you know what sparked it? A single, explosive social media post. So let's look at exactly how modern diplomacy and conflict plays out in real time. Okay, let's dive into this. At the absolute core of our analysis today is an unprecedented public clash between Pakistan and Israel. Now, these are two nations that historically just keep their distance from each other. They don't even maintain formal diplomatic ties. And yet, they suddenly found themselves locked in this fierce, incredibly public confrontation. I mean, when two nuclear-armed states start trading this kind of fiery rhetoric out in the open, the whole world pays attention. So, part one, a deleted diplomatic spark. Here is the quote that essentially started the entire firestorm. It was posted on social media by Khawaja Asif, who is Pakistan's defense minister. In the post, he stated, "Israel is evil and a curse for humanity," and went on to say, "I hope and pray that the people who created this cancerous state burn in hell." Now, objectively speaking, this is an extraordinary level of hostility coming from a sitting defense minister, especially from a government currently trying to position itself as a mediator in regional conflicts. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how instantaneously the retaliation happened. We are literally talking about rapid-fire social media diplomacy here. Within just hours, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired back. He called the remarks outrageous and stated they were absolutely not a statement that could be tolerated, particularly from a government claiming any sort of neutrality. It really just highlights how volatile and fast-paced modern statecraft has become. And the condemnation actually went beyond just the prime minister. Israel's foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, weighed in too. He took a screenshot of the post, which, by the way, was eventually deleted, and he framed it in the starkest possible terms. Sa'ar categorized the language as blatant anti-Semitic lead libels. He argued that using a word like cancerous wasn't just a political insult, it was effectively a literal call for the annihilation of the Jewish state. Let's zoom out for a second for part two, contextualizing the severe allegations. Because, right, this didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was very much a chain reaction. So let's walk through the timeline together. Earlier this year, a highly critical UN report regarding Palestinian detainees is released. Then, jumping to earlier this week, Prime Minister Netanyahu does an interview with CBS News where he directly addresses Pakistan. Just days later, Asif posts that explosive tweet. Within hours, Israel responds, and then later that exact same day, the tweet is quietly deleted. It's totally a domino effect. Let's look a little closer at that very first domino. That first domino was a report published by Francesca Albanese. She's the United Nations Special Rapporteur. And the allegations laid out in this report are incredibly severe. We're talking about reports of unprecedented levels of torture and mistreatment, brutal beatings, and systematic deprivation. The report also details allegations of sexual violence, starvation, and severe physical and psychological trauma for detainees. Naturally, these claims drew immediate, intense global scrutiny directly toward Israeli detention facilities. And this brilliantly illustrates what human rights organizations are zeroing in on. To ground those abstract UN allegations in concrete reporting, let's look at the sheer scale of the situation. According to recent figures, more than 9,300 Palestinians are currently held in Israeli prisons, and of that total, approximately 350 are children. It's this massive scale of detention that really set the stage for the intense rhetoric we just saw play out online. Moving right along to part three, Israel's strong diplomatic pushback. Let's put the two sides of this immediate conflict side by side. On the left, you've got Netanyahu's CBS News interview. In it, he didn't just defend Israel, he actively accused Pakistan of participating in a coordinated anti-Israel campaign. He even alleged that they provided refuge to Iranian military aircraft to shield them from joint U.S.-Israeli attacks. Then, over on the right, you have Defense Minister Asif's blistering initial retort, where he calls Netanyahu a monster who patronizes and promotes the rape of Palestinian prisoners. You literally have specific military accusations being met right back with highly charged, deeply emotional rhetoric. Now, beyond that direct back and forth with Pakistan, Israel does have a broader defense regarding this global backlash. Netanyahu has argued that these shifting international perceptions aren't entirely organic. He claims they are heavily driven by a coordinated online disinformation campaign. Basically, the position is that social media is being systematically weaponized to damage Israel's international image. All right, let's look at the bigger picture in part four, shifting global public opinion. So how is all of this escalating rhetoric actually reflecting macro-level trends? Well, looking at a recent Pew Research poll concerning U.S. public opinion on Israel, the data is pretty striking. Right now, a significant majority, 60%, or 6 in 10 Americans, hold a somewhat or very unfavorable view of Israel. That's compared to 40% with a favorable or neutral view. That unfavorable number represents a really notable increase compared to previous years. So the heated rhetoric we're examining today definitely correlates with a very real, documented shift in public sentiment. And adding immense weight to that shifting public opinion is some seriously mounting international legal pressure. In 2024, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, issued a warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu. The allegations attached to this are pretty much the most severe possible under international law: genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Now, it is absolutely crucial to note here that Israel strongly and consistently rejects every single one of these accusations. But the mere existence of that warrant adds massive, undeniable pressure to literally every diplomatic interaction they have right now. Finally, bringing it all together in part 5, a volatile geopolitical landscape. So you might be wondering, why does a Twitter spat even matter? Well, because the geopolitical stakes literally couldn't be higher. Remember earlier when we mentioned Netanyahu criticizing Pakistan for claiming to be a neutral arbiter? That's because Islamabad is currently acting as a key mediator in some incredibly delicate negotiations between the United States and Iran. Think about it like this: having a supposedly neutral mediator publicly hoping the creators of another state burn in hell injects a frankly terrifying level of unpredictability into a peace process that is already incredibly fragile. For decades, the relationship between Israel and Pakistan was mostly defined by this uncomfortable silence. They didn't have formal ties, and they historically went out of their way to avoid public confrontation. But that silence, it's completely broken now, and it's happening at a really terrifying moment. Recently, there have been these unverified reports surfacing that suggested Pakistan and China actually threatened Israel with a nuclear attack if Netanyahu struck Iran. Now, whether those reports are fully verified or not, the fact that these kinds of nuclear rumors are even circulating shows you exactly how high regional tensions have climbed. Which leaves us with one seriously critical question to ponder. As tensions continue to rise between these historically distant, nuclear-armed nations, how will this explosive public clash impact the future of Middle East peace mediation? I mean, how can a country effectively act as a neutral peacekeeper when its own defense minister is engaged in a rhetorical war with one of the main players? The tweet might be deleted, sure, but those diplomatic shockwaves, they're just getting started. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how this incredibly fragile landscape continues to shift.